What do a mass slasher, a resurrected demon, and a supernatural zombie have in common? No, it's not a start of a bad joke. It's the secret to longevity in horror. These monsters should have been stale by now, but instead, they're thriving again and again.
Modern audiences have become savvy to the rules of the originals. I mean, there are still rules, but the rules have changed.
Because horror franchises, when they do it right, know the key to survival is reinvention. You think you've seen it all, and then bam, Scream flips the rules, Halloween resets the canon, Evil Dead unleashes chaos in a cabin with a new generation.
Why don't you come down here so I can suck your cock, pretty boy?
Mia.
Mia's not here, you fucking idiot!
Today, we're slicing open the anatomy of horror franchises, how they evolve, why they work, and what keeps them coming back for more. Let's get into it. Welcome back to my channel, where we unpack the magic and the madness of the movies we love. If you're into horror, action, sci-fi, or just want to nerd out with someone who still watches Deep Blue Sea unironically, you're in the right place.
We're gonna seal off this.
Today's topic, how horror franchises reinvent themselves and why it works. Now let's be real. Most genres burn out fast when they recycle ideas, but horror has this weird resilience. Somehow, some way, franchises like Scream, Halloween, and Evil Dead just keep pulling themselves out of the grave and coming back stronger.
Something about this one just feels different.
So in this video, we're going to break down why horror needs to reinvent itself more than other genres, how franchises do this successfully, and 3 case studies, Scream, Halloween, and Evil Dead, each with a different playbook for survival. Let's dive in.
New version, 2.0, the killer should be filming the murders.
That's a natural next step in psycho-slasher innovation.
Horror is one of the most reactive genres in film. It responds directly to fears, anxieties, and cultural shifts of the moment. That's why horror from the 70s feels so different than horror from the 2000s. But franchises, they face a trickier challenge. How do you stay relevant without alienating fans who love what came before? The answer, evolve with purpose, not just change for the sake of it, but smart reinvention that reflects new times, new voices, and new fears, while respecting the DNA of the original. Unlike superhero movies, where continuity is sacred, or rom-coms that often reboot with entirely new casts, horror sequels can play with canon, tone, and format, and still keep audiences engaged. Now let's get into the meat of it. 3 iconic horror franchises that prove this point better than anyone else.
Hello, Sydney. Do you like scary movies?
What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
Let's start with Scream, the franchise that reinvented itself by calling out horror tropes as part of the story.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
When Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson dropped the original Scream in 1996, it wasn't just a great slasher, it was a commentary on slashers. It made the rules of horror part of the game, and it did so with style, humor, and actual scares. But here's where the reinvention kicks in. Scream 4 brought back the OG characters, but centered the story around fame culture and online clout.
Well, it's time for someone new to die.
Scream, yes, the 5th one with the confusing title, introduced a new generation while addressing toxic fandoms and legacy sequels.
Hello, Sydney. It's an honor.
And Scream 6 upped the scale, moved the action to New York City, and added layers about trauma, trust, and the rules outside the small town setting.
Hello.
Let's play a game.
You know you're like the 10th guy to try this, right? It never works out for the dipshit in the mask.
Each of these reinventions work because Scream stayed rooted in its self-aware DNA. It comments on horror as it evolves within horror. And Ghostface, always unpredictable because it's not one killer. It's a symbol, a mask that can be worn by anyone.
This isn't like any other Ghostface. What is this place?
A shrine.
That's reinvention baked into the concept, and it allows Scream to refresh without rebooting.
I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Now let's talk Halloween, the OG slasher franchise that's basically gone through every timeline imaginable. Let me give you a quick rundown. There's the original timeline, Halloween through Halloween Resurrection, the Rob Zombie reboots, a grittier, more psychological take, and then the Blumhouse trilogy, Halloween 2018, Kills, and Ends, which ignores everything after the 1978 original.
He was shot by his own psychiatrist and taken into custody that night.
And has spent the last 40 years
in captivity.
That's a bold move, pretending 5+ sequels didn't happen. But here's the thing, it worked. David Gordon Green's Halloween stripped the lore back to basics. Laurie Strode wasn't Michael's sister anymore.
I mean, your grandmother is Laurie Strode.
Wasn't it her brother who murdered all those babysitters?
No, it was not her brother. That's something that people made up.
No cults, no resurrection, just what happens to a woman who was attacked 40 years ago and never stopped repairing. That movie became a box office hit because it felt relevant. It tapped into real-world trauma, generational fear, and the consequences of violence. Even if Kills and Ends split fans down the middle, you can't deny this trilogy tried to say something new while paying respect to the past. The reinvention here is structural. Halloween doesn't just add sequels, it chooses which version of its own story to tell. That's flexibility, for better or worse, and it keeps Michael Myers alive.
Please. Please. You have to get me out of here.
And now, let's talk about Evil Dead, arguably the most daring of the bunch when it comes to tonal reinvention. Sam Raimi's original Evil Dead was a raw, low-budget nightmare in a cabin, but by the time we got to Evil Dead 2, it morphed into a horror comedy hybrid, and Army of Darkness went full medieval fantasy slapstick. Most franchises would have collapsed under those shifts, but Evil Dead thrives because of the core idea. A cursed book unleashing pure chaos is so malleable. The 2013 reboot doubled down on the horror. No Ash, no comedy, just relentless dread and gore. It was brutal and effective, proving the franchise could exist without Bruce Campbell's iconic performance. I still remember squirming in my seat seeing it with my buddies in theaters. Literally, my buddy Mike and I faced each other instead of the screen for like 60% of this movie. It was horrifying. Then came Evil Dead Rise, which moved the terror from the woods to a crumbling apartment building, focused on a mother and her kids, and explored generational trauma while keeping the buckets of blood flowing. Each new iteration reinvents setting, tone, characters, but the spirit remains: visceral horror, grotesque fun, and creative kills. Evil Dead doesn't reboot so much as reimagine, with total freedom.
Halloween night. A small American town. 15 years ago.
So what's the common thread here? How do these franchises prove reinvention is the key to longevity? For Scream, it's that killer reveal in Part 5, when the motive is literally to fix the franchise. That meta layer lands because the movie knows what it's doing and dares to poke the bear. For Halloween, it's Laurie Strode staring out her window in 2018, a gun on the table. 40 years later, she's still haunted. The movie doesn't just bring her back, it transforms her into a survivor with purpose. And for Evil Dead Rise, it's that blood-drenched elevator scene, a claustrophobic, horrifying set piece that proves you don't need Ash or a cabin. You just need the vibe. The soul of Evil Dead is alive and well, and soaked in red. These moments show the reinvention working in real time. They push the franchise forward without losing what made it special in the first place.
You ready for this?
So what's the lesson here? Horror isn't just about screams and scares. It's about reflection, evolution, reinvention. And the best horror franchises don't just repeat themselves. They adapt, they experiment, and they change with us. Scream stays self-aware. Halloween resets its own rules. Evil Dead throws out the rulebook entirely and has a blast doing it. And the result? These stories live on, not just because of nostalgia, but because they still have something to say. Now I want to hear from you. Which franchise do you think reinvented itself the best? Did you love what Halloween Ends did with the story? Do you want more Scream movies, or should it finally reset? And how excited are you for where Evil Dead could go next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk some horror. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more movie deep dives every week, and don't forget, sometimes the scariest thing a franchise can do is play it safe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.